Temperatures are plummeting, the rain is pouring, but the temperature of the cup fever is going up. It's FA Cup third round weekend. This is Under the Abbey Stand, and we are very excited to be talking about the magic of the cup. Hello, and a very warm welcome. My name is Jord and Swindle. This is your Friday preview pod. Joining me this Friday morning, your friend of mine, Jack Swindlehurst. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. I had to battle through the elements to get here this morning. It is truly awful out there, but we're here and we're ready to dissect a game that didn't happen earlier in the week and look ahead to one that hopefully happens tomorrow.
I mean, it's definitely Friday morning. It's not Thursday evening and it's tipping it down. So we are definitely well aware of what the weather conditions are going into this Saturday's game. But yeah, uncharted territory, this, Swindle. The possibility of a second week in a row, or a second pod in a row, I should say, not a week, because we've done so many pods recently. Second pod in a row where we might be previewing a game that is not going to go ahead. It's all fun. Let's recap about last Sunday then. The Grimsby game was postponed. Pros and cons, I feel, for it happening and not happening. Where's your head on this one? Are you in the mindset that it was good that we didn't play and we've got a bit of rest, or did you want Sunday to happen?
It's a funny one. I've kind of felt weird about the game being on a Sunday. I was a bit freaked out about going to the game on a Sunday, going back to work on a Monday, but I was really disappointed that it was called off. I think we've got this momentum going, and I was really disappointed that we didn't kind of get to see us play a Grimsby team that were probably there for the taking, to be honest. And I think would be, it was a shame we couldn't, give them a good game. And it also maybe takes away from the momentum a bit. I went on a podcast with a lad that we'll hear from later, a Blues fan, saying about how it was quite good that we maybe had a break for some of our players that were missing and to give our squad a bit of a break. So I think there's pros and cons, but personally, I was quite sad to not be out there watching us against Grimsby. But of course, it did mean that the Sunday before we went back to work, where the blow was softened a little bit, and there was some silver linings to that cloud.
Yeah, definitely a weird one, having a Sunday afternoon, a Sunday game, and Saturday again, a bit of a weird one, a 5:45 kickoff. I ultimately think Sunday not happening is a good thing for the group. I know they say when the form is good and when you're winning games, you want to just keep playing and you just want to, keep that momentum going. But I don't know, that Christmas period was so crazy. What was it? 4 games in a week, 10 days or whatever it was. I think not having it is definitely going to benefit not just the main starting 11, but the rest of the squad as a whole, and hopefully a bit more refreshed going into Saturday's FA Cup game, but also, and we'll touch on this later, Swindle, an opportunity to maybe not go full strength on Saturday and maybe give a little extended break even more to some of those key players in sort of key positions, and manage their minutes and then go back into Fleetwood in whenever that is in the following weekend's time, much refreshed. And yeah, Neil Harris touched on this in the presser, didn't he? He said that both clubs wanted to play. I don't know. I did sense that he felt relieved that it was off, though.
Yeah, I think there was an element of Neil Harrisism in there where he was probably slightly relieved. I will say that I think it's quite fortunate that game is followed by an FA Cup game. I think we'd be more frustrated if this game had been called off and we had another league game, an away game on the Saturday or whatever. I think we would be really feeling it. But because it's this FA Cup game, I think you're right. I think it's given a chance for players to rest. Some players, who might come in who've not been playing as much, and it's less upsetting the apple cart than if we were trying to come back in and get back into the league straight away. So I think there's no such thing as a free hit in football, but I do feel like it's probably come at the right time. We've had a break, and then hopefully Ian Darler and his team can get Saturday going ahead, and we can give Birmingham a good game, and as you say, you never know what happens in the cup.
Well, just on Ian Darler and team, that's where we're going next in the running order, mate. Obviously Friday morning, wink wink, Friday morning. The conditions last night, Thursday evening, weren't great, were they? They were cold, they were wet. Been a really challenging what, 7 to 10 days or so for the ground staff. Where are you on the optimism chart for Saturday happening? Are you pretty confident it's going to go ahead? You know, we were talking before we hit the record button about Ian Darler's sort of media snippet that went live on Tuesday or Monday. I
Yeah.
can't remember when it went on. Yeah, where are you with this one?
Well, I just think, firstly, we have to kind of give credit where it's due. They are so brilliant at battling the elements with, one of the smaller budgets in the Football League, let alone, League One where we were there and now in League Two. I think they do a fantastic job, and I think they're great at battling the elements. I think one factor that might come into play here is usually it's one type of weather, like it's like torrential rain or ice, or frost or whatever. But I think there's like a combination of quite a lot here, and we've had the ice and the snow previously, and that's probably melted and sunk into the pitch, and some of that will have drained out, and now we've got torrential rain, and then before the game on Saturday there's already freezing temperatures and a snowstorm due. So I feel like it's one of them that might even be out of anyone's hands, really, if that all comes in. A perfect storm is a phrase I've heard from time to time, and it feels like it might be kind of at that point. And if what happens in the next 48 wink wink 24 hours happens, then we might not get a game on just because of rain, snow, wind, ice, and standing water.
I'm very conscious that this pod doesn't become a weather forecast pod, but but my thinking is if it's wet, the snow might not settle, so the snow that's coming might not, might not, cause as many issues. But I absolutely have no idea about this kind of thing, so I don't want to talk too much about it and be proved very, very silly. What I do know, though, Swindle, is when it's cold or it's wet or it's snowing, I like to be hunkered down in a nice warm pub, eating a nice Greek-inspired sandwich. I wonder if you know anywhere where you could send me for this one.
Well, I think there's no other perfect day than Saturday. A late kickoff. Where you're at, but yeah, the Old Spring, our sponsors, would be where I would send you.
That sounds like a lovely, lovely place to go. Number one, Ferry Path, of course. Some good news. Some good news come out of the club yesterday. Contract extension to Mr. Kel Watts. It's one of those topics, Swindle, where I haven't been thinking too much about it, about how many players are actually out of contract in the summer, but there's a fair few. So it's good to hear that progression is happening on, people's futures and the longer term vision for the club. But on Kel Watts specifically, are you happy that he's got himself a new deal? Or do you think it's well deserved? Do you think he could be a big influence for the club going forward over the next couple of seasons, regardless of what division we're in?
I was having that very, very conversation today. I think he weathered a storm. I feel like we're stuck on all these weather puns now. He weathered a storm in the last couple of years where he's had some tricky times at Cambridge United. He struggled at times in League One and was certainly questioned by a lot of people at the start of this season. And I think he's really come good and shown his worth and is a player that we can rely on now. And he's become a little bit of a gimmick almost with his kind of his thigh backs winding up opposition fans and the club even posting a tribute video to him, plenty more of these to come or whatever. But he's a really good defender, and he's just started to kind of show what he can do at the other end of the pitch as well, contributing with goals. And he does just look a bit more astute than he was, and he's learned from the experience he's gained with Cambridge United. And he comes out in his interview afterwards and says it's the best place for me, and I think that's a great thing to hear a player say. He's obviously happy here, settled. And yeah, it's just a brilliant thing to see that, they're putting faith in players like that. I think a lot of players who've maybe gained some flack from fans and have come through it, come out the other side. I think it's testament to their mentality, and I think it's brilliant to see a player like that come through and show themselves. And I said to someone today when we were having a chat, he's been absolutely cracking in League Two, and if we're a League Two player team next season, then he's a great player to have. But if somehow by hook or by crook we get up to League One, then that's someone who's fought back from adversity and could be a really useful tool in League One as well.
I know this might sound a little bit detrimental, but I almost feel the relegation to League Two might be quite good for Kel Watt's career. I know he's played League One more than just that season with us, but it's almost sort of coming down. Doing a year in League Two might benefit him longer term. I think he's improved so much since the relegation. Really fascinating comments from Neil Harris in the presser about Kel Watts, about how he's improved his decision making, his distribution, his footwork. So completely agree with all of those. And I also watched Kel Watts' interview on CUFC TV, which I recommend you all do as well. And he talked really highly of the club, like Swindle mentioned a second ago. But one of the things that I really liked from that interview was him talking about Morrow, Michael Morrison, obviously, who is back fit, as we learnt from the presser, and is available for the Birmingham game. But he's talking about Morrison's influence on the dressing room, and even while he's been out injured and not in the playing squad, how he's inspired the dressing room. And I found it really endearing hearing Kel Watts talking about sort of picking up that leadership style, and that's where he wants to go and what he wants to do. And smitten at the moment, longer term it'd be great if that could be something that he develops here. Definitely I just think all of the defenders and the goalkeeper that we've got this season, I know it's early to say this and a lot could happen in the second half of the season, but I think they've all got to be contenders for the League Two Team of the Year come the end of the season. Gibbo obviously is up for Player of the Month for the league, so you can go vote for him online. But I think they're all having a sort of a terrific season so far, and we head into this January transfer window with a pretty solid defensive unit, and it feels great to know that that's one area of the pitch that we don't need to focus on. That's me, Swindle, teeing us up for some good January transfer window chat. Obviously, it is Friday the 9th of January. We're 9 days into the window. No one's here yet, mate. No new signings. I can tell you're livid. I can see the rage boiling away in there. But this was touched on in Neil Harris' presser. Quite a few bits that he touched on, and I think the bit that made me feel good was around almost a little smugness in Neil Harris's tone about how clubs go into the January window at various levels of desperation, and actually we're in a really good place. We do need to recruit. There are areas that we can improve on, but it's not desperate. Maybe you could make a case for the top end of the pitch and a striker. But even then, I don't know if you would say we're desperate for it. But where's your thinking on the January window so far? Are you worried that we haven't signed anyone yet, or is this what you were expecting? You were expecting a slower window and later joiners?
Yeah, everyone takes a while to get back into the swing of it in January, don't they? Got to answer a few emails before you can do the proper work and get the out of office off and get yourself settled in the chair. But no, I think honestly, I'm not too worried. As football fans, we're very fickle. And I was about to say, I feel a lot better than the last few January transfer windows. I mean, obviously I do, because we're in a way better position and we're winning games. It doesn't matter that we're in a league below. It's so kind of fickle. But I think you're very right. I think we're actually in a position where the top part of the pitch is where we need to recruit, but then the players that have come in have really made a difference up there, and players that have come back like Apre and that really have come back and hit the ground running immediately. So it's not kind of disaster stations, but I think we will be fully expecting 2 or 3 people to come through the door before the end of the month, and I think in the coming weeks they will do. I think people always get edgy when teams around you make signings and people start talking about teams spending money and all that kind of stuff. But I think we need to very much focus on ourselves and not get swept up in that. Of course, Paul Mullin going back to Wrexham being released by Wigan never helps, because it's Kwesi Appiah all over again. As soon as that man rears his ugly head, there's a million people seeing him pulling in at Bar Hill, services, filling up his car or whatever. So yeah, I'd love to see him back, but I think that's probably one that won't happen.
How dare you say Paul Mullin's ugly head? It's a lovely head on that man. Yeah, that's on the running order. Mullin chat brackets pros and cons. Yeah, we can't not touch on the fact that he's gone back from Wigan to Wrexham, and obviously until we know what the story is, there's got to be a little bit of intrigue as Cambridge United fans about where he's going to end up. what are your pros and cons for him joining? So should we do pros first? I think.
Pros, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think back to his time at United and where he really made his bread and butter, it was, almost in that kind of. I don't want to compare the two players because they're very different, but you think about where Appere scores his goals from
Yeah.
in and around that area, and I think Paul Mullin was that guy, but more prolific and maybe a little more to his game. So I think there has to be, regardless of what's happened in the past few years, punctured lungs across the pond and less playing time and loan moves that haven't gone right, and I don't think he was ever really frozen out, but there was a bit of a narrative about being frozen out. But I think that's a player who's proven at this level for our very team he can do it at this level, and a few years have passed, but it's someone that if we were offered it, I think we'd take him, and I think he could still definitely do a job. I think this league is a weird point. This league, I think it's competitive, but I'm not sure it's the best it's been in the last 5 or 10 years. So I think there's certainly an opportunity for a player like him to come in and make a difference. Cons, I suppose I've kind of mentioned them already. There's been a severe lack of game time for him, and when he has come in, he's struggled. I think probably the Wigan setup didn't suit him, particularly when he did come in. There was he famously missed a penalty as well when he was brought in for a cup game, and I think you have to kind of take those chances if you're going to endear yourself to fans and give yourself a bit of a chance. So I think that's
I always felt nervous when he stepped up with penalties. He had in that promotion year, he did take a couple of stinkers, didn't he? I'm thinking of like Tranmere away. I think he might have got the rebound, but yeah, he was never the most confident with penalties.
No, he's got this kind of draggy penalty style where it looks like he's dragging them wide and then kind of doesn't quite connect. And if keeper goes the wrong way, you look good, but if he doesn't, then yeah, you look bad. So I think there are a few cons to his game, and I think it would take him a while to kind of adjust to this level of football again. We might not be really quite the same style of football that we played when he was in the team, and that might he might struggle with that. I think this team, as a newcomer coming into this team, it might take a little bit longer to kind of get used to it. It's quite a strange style of football we play, and maybe not the most kind of obvious League Two style of football. So yeah, it might be a struggle for him. And this is all complete conjecture because the likelihood of Paul Mullin walking through the Dublin suite anytime soon is unlikely. But you never know. But I would definitely.
You never know, mate. On a short term,
I'd take him 100%. If you're asking me, yes, is the answer.
I think the pros and cons for me, I would take him. Yes, but my preference for this January window, and I talk about it in a pod that's coming up on the Coconut Tier this month, and you should all subscribe to that. Go to undertheabbeystand.com for more information on that. You get special monthly pods, but you also get a lot of written articles as well. But we were talking on a pod that's coming out on the Coconut Tier soon about what we'd like in January and reviewing the players so far. I think we need two strikers this window. One is a goal scorer, which I think Mullin is, obviously. I know he's not had many minutes. He's had a lot of appearances at Wigan, but not minutes. So, a lot from the bench, not 90 minutes appearances and so on. And I think the other striker we need is someone that can do what CUFC was doing, be like a physical presence, be a bit of an outlet for going long. I think I'm not that worried by Mullin's minutes. Tripped up on that one, Swindle, because you look at like how we've been going this season with Lavery. I feel like he could come into that rotation of being someone that doesn't start games but finishes games, and we have a lot of chances created, and we're obviously not scoring many goals. And I just wonder if he might be a good little fit for someone that could be a finisher rather than a starter and rather than the 90 minutes. I think the biggest con for me, you covered a lot of them already there, fitness and minutes and so forth. But I think the biggest con is it's quite a short-term move, isn't it? You might be able to convince him to come south for between now and the end of April, May, 5 months. You might be able to convince him of that and the whole off the field stuff, the family setup, his autistic son and so forth. You might be able to convince him for that, but you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't be able to convince him long term or offer him the money that makes it worthwhile. So that's the con for me. Interesting in the Harris presser, he said that they've had, the quote is, powerful conversations. I like that. I wonder what a powerful conversation is, but they've even had players at the training ground that's not got across the line. So that sounds very familiar to past transfer windows and people being here. So yeah, very excited to see how this transfer window pans out. And 9 days in Swindle, I'm still positive, but I think when you and I do a preview pod in a couple of weeks' time, it might be a little bit more negative. And where's this emergency under 23 signing to fill the gap? Before we move to Birmingham in more detail, a couple of things in the presser yesterday from Harris that I wanted to run past you around squad availability. Confirmation finally around the Adam Mayer injury. We feared it might be a bad one. 10 weeks was mentioned in the presser, so a similar returning time to the squad as CUFC. Was that sort of March time, if I've got that right? That's a big loss, isn't it, mate? What's your take on that time frame?
I think the first thing to say on these is I think the club have learned from their mistakes, and I think they're not doing any of this kind of 8 to 10, 6 to 8 weeks anymore. They're hitting the maximum that it can be, and they did the same with Lavery, and I think they probably did the same with Morrow, and I think it's probably better to do it that way. You put an upper limit on it, and if you can say you can have that player back within 10 weeks, anything else before that appears to be a bit of a bonus. And I think, it's a real miss. He's just been so brilliant. We've spoken about him numerous times on pods. He's a cut above, really, and he should, by all rights, be playing in a league above. He's made a real difference to the players around him as well. He's kind of brought players up and improved those around him, and you can't really ask for more than that. And I think you're going to come onto this, so I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit, but neither of those loans have been, recalled or cancelled, sorry, should I say. And I think that's a really big point, because I think that shows that both these players are really valued. I think Mayer has done probably more than Kwasi in a way, but actually Kwasi, if you think about his return and the input and the impact he's had when he's been playing, has been brilliant. So both of them still potentially to come back at a really important time is a positive, but in the next 8 or 9 games, Mayer's going to be a massive miss, and it's such a shame, because he was just really starting to kind of evolve into the player that we really wanted him to be. But you've got to have faith in the players that are there, waiting in the wings, and we've seen from them, you've seen the likes of Ben Knight come in and just really start to hit the ground running. You'll struggle to find many players that have a full consistent season, but if we can get really good returns out of a lot of these players across the season, then it's a good formula to have, and hopefully Mayer can come back and help us at the business end.
Yeah, absolutely. The point you're alluding to there about when Mayer and Kouassi could be back, if they are early to mid-March, they're back for the run-in. If we go to a postseason and playoffs, then it would almost feel like new signings having them there for that extra momentum. The other thing with Adam Mayer, like, he is, my player of the season so far. I've loved watching him play, and I miss him not being in the squad. But I think Brophy did well as a wing back. And then the other thing that came from the presser as well is almost forgotten man Zach Bradshaw should be back for the following weekend, Fleetwood away. I believe he's played wing back in the past, and I think he did it in a couple of Virtue games for us and scored earlier in the season. So it's almost like we're kind of dealing quite well with sort of the injuries again. Like, we had it over the last couple of months, like how well we've sort of done in the face of adversity via these injuries. And it feels like we do have options. So as much as I'm going to miss him, I'm not all doom and gloom. Other good news as well, Michael Morrison is fit and available. Would you bring him in on Saturday? Does it feel like a good game to play him? It is that free hit. There's less sort of pressure on it as such. Would you be tempted to give him some minutes, regardless of the fact he obviously has that big Birmingham connection in his past?
Well, you mentioned that. The reason why I'm wryly smiling is I went on the Birmingham Reverse podcast of ours and said there was 0% chance that Michael Morrison would feature at all. So the press conference has really thrown a cat among the pigeons. But yeah, actually, saying that, I'll completely, turn on a sixpence. Yeah, I'll definitely bring him back in. I think that connection almost kind of will probably make him play up a bit. I think it's great to have Morrow back, and I certainly don't want to see him made into a sacrificial lamb at all. But I think putting him into the team and, getting him out there, getting straight back into it, if we get 45 minutes out of him, I think that could be quite a shrewd move. And I think if it's the first 45 or the second 45, it's much of a muchness. It might be a little bit sacrificial lamb if they kind of there's a couple of players they've got who haven't been getting many minutes, who are a cut above, they're international footballers, Lyndon Dykes and Kyogo, who both might come in and they could make our lives very difficult, but they would make any of our defenders' lives very difficult, I think. So I think with Morrow back, a bit of a talisman for us, that kind of older, responsible player. I think it'd be great to have him back and get him out against his old team. Yeah.
I just think back to that Fulham away game in the Carabao. Corey Smith out of nowhere starts. Shane Lavery just back from injury starts. It feels like Neil Harris is happy to take those risks and roll that dice in cup games and give people minutes that you weren't expecting. However, to sort of contradict myself there, he did speak a lot in the press about how much he loves the FA Cup and it's the best competition. So I wonder if he might not be as willing to do that and take it a bit more serious. But we will touch on lineups in a second. I feel like this is a good spot to stop and hear that fan interview that you did with us, Swindle. So yeah, over to Swindle and Sam Sheppey.
Right then, news fans. I'm joined by Blues fan Sam Sheppey. Sam, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Nice to be back on the channel again. I know, as I said in my channel, that it was going to be sort of a meeting that we expected quicker than what we anticipated because of the gap in divisions between us. But the FA Cup's here and we're playing each other again.
Yeah, pleasure to have you back on. Sam, tell us a bit about what you're doing around the Blues at the moment.
So currently I run my own YouTube channel doing match previews covering Birmingham, and I'm also doing some work with the club and Alan March Sport to provide audio description and commentary, which is commentary at the home game for men's and women's to, I suppose, like fill in the blanks for blind and visually impaired spectators. So providing commentary through like a headset that then I can speak to them through because they may not sort of know fully what's happening at the time that it is happening. So I'm there to fill in the blanks and commentate on some games. And out of the 4 games that I've done this season, we've won all 4. So I've been a bit of a lucky omen for the club, but there's also been 20 goals in the 4 games. So a lot to cover.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, at least there's, plenty of goals to talk about and, plenty of instant. Well, listen, Sam, brilliant to have you on. Let's get into the game then. An interesting one, as you say, we've played each other a few times in past seasons, both as League One sides. Now Cambridge are a League Two side and Birmingham in the Championship. How has this season been so far for you?
So the season so far has been a bit of a mixed bag because there was a lot of hype and expectation going into it because of the way that we got out of League One and because we've got 111 points. The Blues fans see that and go, okay, we're going to go back to back. We're going to do an Ipswich or a Southampton or a Norwich. And I feel like this season it's not quite panned out that way yet because, for one, our away form has been really bad. Like we've only won 2 games away from home and we struggled because we're playing the way that we do, which is very much possession based and a lot of possession, but not a whole lot of purpose, I feel like, away from home, because that's something that we had a lot of last season, but just against better opposition, it's been harder to execute. So we've had fewer opportunities, and also the players that we've had in those forward areas haven't quite been able to fire because you've got Jay Stansfield that has been doing well, but I suppose the players around him haven't really been assisting him as such because you've got the likes of Lewis Kumas who's coming from Liverpool on loan but only scored 1 goal, and that was the goal that he scored against Coventry in the last game. And you've got Damari Gray and Patrick Roberts who we looked at them as signings and gone very good, what you need for championship level. And yes, they have been creative, but 1, they've had their problems of injuries, and 2, they also had a bit of a setting in phase because Roberts, dropping back down to the championship again and new players around him, and also Gray coming to the club from Saudi Arabia, and it took him a bit long to get up to speed with the English game again because obviously in Saudi Arabia the football's slower there. So I feel like we suffered a bit and not really had a run of form yet to be proud of, and it's been good result then followed up by a bad result. So that's why we really find ourselves in mid-table.
Yeah, I suppose that's typified by the 2 games that you've played so far this year. A 3-0 away loss to Watford, but then beating high flyers Coventry 3-2. Does that kind of sum up how the season's gone so far?
Yeah, you can really go from one extreme to another, can't you? Because after that Watford loss, it was like, right, what is this season really about? Because we were starting to look over our shoulder, sort of down at the bottom 3, because with Birmingham, it's never out of the realms of possibility to be in a relegation battle in the Championship because we've been down there so many times and having just come up from League One, it's something that we are wary of. But then that 3-2 win against Coventry did give us some hope because it goes to show what we can do when we're on our A game and we can cause even the top teams in the league problems because of the forward threats that we do have, and Marvin Dutch, who hasn't really shown up for a lot of the season, signed from Werder Bremen in the Bundesliga. We were expecting big things from him, but he struggled to adapt to the English game, and I feel like he just struggled to adapt to the physicality of the game. But it was really his positioning and where he found himself in getting the 2 goals, in where he thrived in that game against Coventry. So players that we signed to turn up for big games actually did in the game against Coventry, and that's why we won it.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So, I mean, 7 points off the playoffs, and 10 above the relegation zone. Is the aim for the season now really looking up to kind of get into that playoff picture?
It's never impossible in the Championship, because in the Championship there's very often a team that just emerges from nowhere towards the back end of the season and just all of a sudden is in the playoff mix. And while we were at the start of the season in the top 6, we had fallen off, but I don't feel like we're completely out of reach yet. I think at the moment the gap from us to 6th is 7 points, which isn't impossible to make up. But I suppose with Watford, with a game in hand, being in that 6th place spot, they could pick up 3 points, and then it makes it even harder. So I feel like for us to get in the top 6, we'd have to put together a really good run, which I feel like is possible with our home form, because we only lost 1 home game this season and we have been strong there. But it's just that away form that we need to sort out and need to sort out urgently.
Yeah, certainly interesting. Interesting to see if you can do it away in the FA Cup at Cambridge. Then, if we look at personnel first before style of play, who are some of the players you pick out that you think might shine in the Cambridge game? You mentioned earlier that maybe they'll ring a few changes, and a few players that haven't got as much of a look in might get a look in. Is there any that you can pick out that you think might feature?
So I reckon Kyogo will feature for us up front. Someone that we signed from Rennes actually for quite big money, and he had made his name at Celtic, scoring the goals there under Ange Postecoglou, and really benefited from Ange Ball, should we say? And I feel like the positions that he found himself in, and just the clinical finisher that he was in Scotland, we've not seen in a Birmingham shirt. And I'd say that's partly down to what I said earlier with chance creation and just not really having the right openings going forward. But also he's someone that's just lacking a lot of confidence, because I think there's a statistic this season in the Championship that he's missed 12 big chances. And he seems to find himself in those right positions, but just not taking the chances and just overthinking it. Like he finds himself 1-on-1, puts it over the bar, or he's like 2 yards out from goal and puts it over the bar like he did against Southampton. So he's finding himself in really good opportunity and spaces, but he's just not got the conviction really to score and really make a difference for us. But I feel like the Cambridge game could be a good opportunity for him to start the game, get some minutes, and just get that goal to just give him a bit of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Be interesting to see, who features for both sides. And as I said, there'll be a strong side from Cambridge, but probably not our strongest, but certainly ringing some changes. So how do you think Birmingham are going to set up, and what kind of style of play do you think we're going to see from Birmingham?
So the formation's always been a 4-2-3-1 under Chris Davis, and that has rarely changed. It's only ever changed if we're chasing a goal and we just chuck on a load of strikers. But with the way that we've set up this season, the 4-2-3-1 has become a bit regimented, because you've got the 2 holding midfielders, and a lot of frustration has come from the Blues fans with those defensive midfielders not passing forward when they could. It's the safe pass that they often look for. But I feel like with the urgency that we need to have, especially sort of in the Championship this season, and we find ourselves behind a lot, it's frustrating for the Blues fans, because you just want to see us get forward and create chances, but you're still following this formula of possession where really you just need shots on target and to test their goalkeeper. So the formation would very much stay the same, but I'm just hoping that the way that we apply ourselves in the formation is a bit different, because in the last couple of games I have seen a slight change, because you've got Tommy Doyle that was suspended that has come back into the team and made a difference, and you've also got Paix and Ho, who's been ever present in our team, but I feel could maybe be on the bench for the Cambridge game, because he's played so many minutes and because he picked up a head injury against Coventry. So he's a key player that may be missing, but I think the personnel may change, but the formation will very much stay the same.
Yeah, interesting. Just before we go then to predictions, I can see that the remaining games for Birmingham in January: Swansea away, Sheffield Wednesday away, Stoke at home, and Oxford United away. Do you think playing 3 teams in the bottom half will be playing in the manager's mind at all, and thinking there's an opportunity in the league to really get some points, and that might, kind of provoke some rotation?
I'd say there is going to be rotation, and I think because of the amount of players that we've got that are unhappy with their minutes too, because throughout the Christmas and New Year's period, we played a lot of the same players, and there are some like Lyndon Dykes, who you mentioned on my channel that you're a fan of, that's just not been seeing minutes, and he's rumoured to be leaving. So whether that transfer is complete by the time that we play Cambridge, I'm not sure. But if he is around, then he's someone that I imagine would play in the game. And Kanya Fujimoto, who's an attacking midfielder for us that we signed from Gil Vicente in Portugal, he's only played half an hour of league football this season. So he was someone that was signed with sort of big ambitions, but hasn't made it into the team. So he's someone that could feature against Cambridge. So we've got quite a lot of fringe players, quite a lot of people that are unhappy with their minutes. So that's where I could see the rotation coming in.
Brilliant. Well, interesting to see. And yeah, certainly going to be an interesting one under the lights on Saturday. How do you see it going then? How do you see the game panning out, and what do you reckon the result's going to be?
So I reckon both teams will score. I haven't really been confident in us keeping a clean sheet in a while, because we haven't kept a clean sheet in a while. So the more it goes on like that, the more you just think the opposition's going to score, regardless of who they are. And I feel like with Cambridge and with Neil Harris, he's someone that knows how to manage in a big game, knows how to handle the FA Cup ties, and especially being at your place as well. It's not going to be a cakewalk, put it that way. You guys are going to give us a real tough test. You're going to make it physical. You're going to make it tough for us to find the space that we want in the midfield. I feel like it's going to be very packed in there. So that could factor into what happens in the game. And I do think that we will score in the game, because we've got talent going forward. It's just about whether we get that first goal, and then whether our fans then sort of get up for it, because I feel like if it turns cagey and it's 0-0 round about the 75th minute, we're going to be hoping that we can get a late goal, but then you guys maybe might shut up shop and then make it hard to break it down. So I reckon, I said on my channel that it could be a 3-1 victory, and I'm saying that if Birmingham score first. I feel like the first goal is going to be so crucial in this game, because if you get it and you've got something to hold on to, it's going to be even harder then for us to break you down.
Yeah, certainly interesting to see. In one of those FA Cup games, anything can happen. Listen, Sam, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Great to chat to you again.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you very much, Swindle. I feel like I had to introduce Sam as Sam Sheppy. So it's one of those names that is, you have to say it in full. Yeah. You obviously did that fan interview. Thank you for doing that. What was your takeaway from speaking to Sam? What kind of sort of, I don't know, nuggets of information stuck with you? How are things at Birmingham?
They're in a funny old place at the moment. I think they, had we played them after New Year's Day, they lost 3-0 away at Watford, and it was all a bit doom and gloom. And then on Sunday, they come out and beat league leaders Coventry 3-2 at home. So, their league position tells all the stories it needs to tell. They're, mid-table, 1-9, lost 10, drawn 7, -1 goal difference. They're just indifferent. They had a kind of okay start to the season, then a good run, then they kind of dropped down. They're 7 points off the playoff in that league. It's a tough league, but I think they don't really know quite where they're at the moment. They spent quite a lot of money in the summer. There's a guy, Marvin Dutch, up front, who signed from Werder Bremen, apparently, who hasn't been anywhere as near as good as he's supposed to be. Kyogo, the guy who played for Celtic, plays for Japan. You've got Lyndon Dykes as well, who just doesn't get a game. So there's quite a few high-profile players in there. But then there's also quite a lot of players who have really kind of excelled. I think Lewis Koumas, who's on loan from Liverpool, and Jay Stansfield are two players, who people will have heard of, who have been really good for them this season. And they're a danger. We saw they were a danger when we were in the same league as them, and struggled against them. And now there's, we're 2 leagues apart, and they've spent more money, and our squad is, actually maybe arguably a little bit better. But I think they're a little bit concerned about this, because I think they're more focused on the league. I've listened to a couple of Birmingham podcasts this week, and they don't quite know how they're going to start. I think they'd rather focus on the league. 7 points off the playoffs in the Championship is doable, certainly from this point in the season. So I think they've got half an eye on that. So I think it's a good time to play them in that respect. I think we've made the Abbey a difficult place to come to this season. So I don't think that by any stretch of the imagination they think they're going to walk this. So I think it's a good time to play them, and a bit of kind of cautious optimism, if anything, from Sam. Yeah,
that could be the leveler, couldn't it? Being at home, being at the Abbey, the great home form that we've got. Then you throw into the mixer, the weather conditions, and again, don't want to turn this into a weather podcast, but if it's very cold, if it's raining, those just aren't conditions that you want to play football in, let alone, the better style of football of, getting the ball down and knocking it around. So it could be a leveler. It could make it something that plays to our advantage. The question that I had next in the running order, which you've kind of sort of touched on when you're sort of talking about the players there, was just how difficult a test you think it's going to be on Saturday, because Neil Harris was quizzed about this in the presser. Is he worried about the unbeaten run coming to an end and the good home form coming to an end? Personally, I can't say I'm that bothered by it. In many ways, there's a part of me that wants us to lose at some point so we can just stop talking about the unbeaten run and then just focus on winning games and not thinking about how long it's been since we've lost. But how difficult are you expecting Saturday to be? Do you think they might rotate? Are they still really decent if they rotate anyway? A very expensive squad put together there.
Yeah, I think they're scarily good when they rotate. I think they've got internationals on the bench, which just goes to show their kind of strength and depth. I think they're a bit of an unknown entity because I think a lot of these players have really fired blanks when they should have been, having good returns this season. So I think there's a little bit of frustration from a Birmingham point of view about these players. And this is the game where they're going to be under the most pressure. If you're bringing these players in against a League Two side, then, the fans and the management are going to want them to perform. So all the pressure's on them. And I completely agree with you that if it might be actually quite good to kind of lose a game to stop the talk about the unbeaten run, because, there's been a few times where the unbeaten run chat has been continued by a pretty disappointing draw and we've maybe glossed over it a little bit. So actually, if we lost this one, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But for Birmingham, it's a big banana skin and it could kind of derail, their season. Beating top of the league Coventry and then coming to little old Cambridge and losing that in the cup and going back into a tricky championship. They've got 4 more games in January and 3 of them against teams in the bottom half. So they'll want to, push on and win those to get towards the playoffs. So I think there's a lot more pressure riding on it for them, and that'll probably tell. And as you say, the weather over the last 24 hours has been absolutely awful. And it could be, it could be fairly greasy out there and, could be blowing a gale and rain or sleet or snow. So I think that could play to Cambridge's advantage. And I think Birmingham, might struggle in that. So really difficult to tell what happened, but a lot more pressure on the away team than there is on us for sure.
I'm going to flip it. How strong do you reckon we'll go? Because obviously, as we've discussed, he has used other cup competitions to rotate and give people minutes that you wouldn't expect. Do you think the lack of a game on Sunday, the postponement against Grimsby, might change it? He might go, I don't know, a little bit more stronger because people have had that time off, or do you think he might still rotate a bit?
This is Neil Harris we're talking about. Honestly, it's so hard to know what he's going to do. And we so rarely have this, I don't want to call it a luxury, but this situation where a game's being called off. So we've had an unexpected break. And I honestly don't know what he's going to do. As you say, we've got Morrow coming back and you've got Rossi in there who might actually stay in. So, but do you pair an immediately back Morrow with a Rossi who's short on minutes this season, and then that experiment could go quite wrong? We've got Watts who's signed the deal, but we need to preserve him, and Job for really important back end of the season. But I think there will be some changes, and of course you've mentioned Bradshaw's not going to be ready, but Purrington certainly might be someone who comes in. If you think about Mayer being sadly sidelined and maybe even cup-tied, I think. But anyway, regardless of that, Purrington might be someone who comes in, and then you look to the bench, and I think I don't think there's going to be too much to change. In all honesty, I don't know if there will be too much change. If you look at the New Year's Day lineup, I don't think there's going to be too much change from that. You might see Mpanzu come in. I think he's going to go strong, is my answer to your question. I've gone very roundabout in this, but I think he's probably going to go quite strong. And I think rightfully so, because regardless of how Birmingham's set up, it could turn into a bit of an embarrassment if you rotate too much and throw too much caution to the wind. You're 3 or 4-0 down at half time at home on telly. You have to remember that we're on TV on
Discovery Plus.
Yeah,
I'm sure everyone's going to be watching as we clash at the same time as Spurs Villa.
Yeah.
Why would you watch that crap? Yeah.
Across the world, people will be watching and tuning in, as we saw the club handily share the timings of the kickoffs around the world. But I think there is something to be said for regardless of how the result goes, it's the nature of the performance. I still think we need to put a performance into that game and not just roll over and take it. So Neil Harris would never do that anyway. So I think there'll be little change, and he might experiment a little bit and bring people on off the bench. But I'd say he's probably going to go for it, and we'll see where we are come 8:00 on Saturday night.
I too am looking at the starting lineup for when we last played Walsall at home. it's hard to see where he's going to make the changes, because I think he might want Don Bull and McLovin to get minutes. So I think he might keep them. I've got a sneaky feeling he might start Morrison instead of Rossi. But other than that, I'm not sure where he might do changes. I think he'll keep Brophy and Bennett as the wing backs. And yeah, I think he'll start with Appere up top rather than say starting Lavery, just because we might want to keep it simple on Saturday with bad conditions, maybe hit it long. And, I'm expecting us to spend a lot of time defending and the ball in our own half. And yeah, maybe Appere is more of an outlet than Lavery is. So yeah, it's hard to see too many changes to the starting lineup other than that Morrison one coming in, or maybe Mpanzu for one of Ben Knight or Kai, possibly Ben Knight, which sounds mad given how well he played against Walsall. But yeah, not too many changes that I can foresee. It doesn't sound like there's injuries that are impacting the starting lineup as well. One thing that Harris said in the presser, I want to get your thoughts on it. You've used this term already in the pod. Is this a free hit?
There's no such thing. There's no such thing, and we're always told that as football fans and podcasters. Whenever you mention that phrase, people get a little bit hot under the collar. No, but I think Birmingham will be saying to their players, Cambridge will be thinking this is a free hit. So like there's no pressure on us. And I think to that extent, I think there's little pressure on us. I think we want to give a good account of ourselves. And, I said on Sam's podcast, there'll be players out there who want to put in a performance that's seen on TV. And I think, use that as an incentive, use that as a carrot to dangle in front of them. And also use the fact that use that unbeaten run. Why not? Tell them that's how many games are unbeaten. Tell them we can carry on and go into the new year and push on through January in the league. And also tell them you can get in the draw for the fourth round. And suddenly you've got some seriously big names in there and less middling names. So yeah, there's plenty of incentive for Cambridge United to go out and give this game a good go and ultimately win it. So I think Birmingham will be feeling a lot more pressure, but that's not to say Cambridge United should go out there and do anything else other than try and win the game.
And are we going to do it, Swindle? Are we going to win it? What's your prediction?
I can't go on one podcast and say a prediction and not return it on the other. I went on Sam's podcast and said it was going to be close. I said Birmingham were going to go in the lead, but Cambridge United are going to come back and win it 2-1 late on. Great drama in the FA Cup.
Oh, I love that. Love that. Are you manifesting? Got to check if that's what you're doing.
I forgot about that. That was a very 2025 thing. But yeah, still manifesting positivity 2K26.
Where's my head on this? I'm just leaning towards extra time. I think we'll go to extra time, and then maybe we lose it from there, or lose it on pens. I'm just not sure enough that we'll get across the line. Obviously, would love it if we did. Don't care about the fixture congestion and the pile up and so on. Extra money for signing Paul Mullin and another striker. But yeah, maybe not as confident as your good self. But do you know what, Swindle? Let's roll out the cliche about wanting to focus on the league, and storming those autos.
Absolutely. Don't mind that at all, mate.
Right. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. Before you go, just a reminder, we do have the coconut tier. There's some really good stuff on there. There's extra written articles every week. There are extra pods on there. There's the mid-season review that Caspel, Julian and I have done. And there's also another special pod on there that Julian has done with Ben Griffiths about data and stats of the season so far. So yeah, if you are in the position to do so, you can subscribe to the Coconut tier for £5 a month. Another plug for our sponsors, the brilliant Old Spring. Head down there at any time and with a Cambridge United ticket get a discount. But on the match day, there's the Matchday Meal Deal and also the happy hour for half price drinks as well. All great stuff. Swindle, it's been lovely to see you, mate. Have you got that cup fever?
Oh, mate, I've got that cup fever. Come wind, rain or shine, you'll find me at the Abbey cheering at 5:45 on Saturday, whether there's any players there or not.
Right, I'm off to go and get some tinfoil to finish my cutout cup. I will see you all at the Cladara. Until next time, goodbye.